Welcome to the Rewilded Human Podcast, where Dr. Lucille, holistic psychiatrist and psychotherapist, and Dr. Lynn, naturopath and nutritional consultant, help you reconnect with your true self. Through practical tips on mental health, nutrition, exercise, relationships, and spirituality, with a dash of humor, they tackle today's toughest issues to guide you back to a harmonious, vibrant life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rewilded Human Podcast. Today, we are diving deep into the science of light, metabolism, and fat loss with Dr. Sara Pugh, a neuroscientist, biochemist, and the ultimate quantum health expert. In this episode, we uncover how blue light exposure can actually make you fat and diabetic, why morning sunlight is a non-negotiable for weight loss and healing, and how cold exposure helps build brown fat, which is a powerhouse tissue that burns more calories and boosts your metabolism. If you've been struggling with weight gain despite eating well and exercising, this conversation will open your eyes to the missing piece of the puzzle, your light environment. Get ready for an eye-opening discussion that challenges everything you thought you knew about your metabolism.
Well, we're so happy to have you with us, Dr. Sara. We can pick your brain. And I'm going to start off with the first question, which I think would be most relevant to our viewers, which is, what is quantum biology and how is it vital for to know about it for our healing and for our daily maintenance?
Yeah, I think quantum biology is really difficult to define now because of what the word quantum actually means. So in terms of what it is for the layperson or a medic or a doctor or a practitioner or anybody interested in health, it's looking at how physics, especially light and magnetism and water, and then other things like electricity and gravity, how physics shapes life and how we can avoid or include different aspects of this, be it changing our water, getting different light, understanding magnetism, and more about the body being sort of electronic. And all of this is sort of scientifically backed as well. It's just sometimes when we think about health, we're very focused just on biology, and we're a lot more than just a lump of meat. And when it comes to solving sort of health issues, a lot of people have done all of the food and the exercise and the supplements and the massage and the Pilates and the therapy, and then they still have issues or problems. The other aspect about looking at the body through a physics lens is there are lots of, as we know, rises in serious illnesses, be it depression, cancer, diabetes, and it can't just be the seed oils. Of course, they're a problem. We have to look to see, okay, what else is contributing to this sort of global health decline. So that's the difficulty in defining quantum as well. But just in terms of keeping it simple, it's looking at the body through a physics lens, but making it simple and practical for lay people, but also having the science strong so that what we talk about can be implemented or considered by maybe a doctor or a research scientist.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. Sara, tell us about your orange glasses before we jump into the topic of today.
Okay, so because we're going to be talking about artificial blue light particularly,
yes.
These are called blue blockers, and because it's now the sun has now set in the UK, and I have light which isn't natural, I've set my computer to block the majority of the artificial blue light, and then I have a lamp or an incandescent light over there. But still, in terms of trying not to confuse my body or worse, disturb my melatonin production, wearing orange lenses can be, say, for somebody who's all brand new to this and wanted to make one change, getting blue blockers would be something very accessible to them. And there are different color blue blockers. You can get yellow ones if you work on a computer all day, because that'll block some of the blue light, because it's not only bad for metabolism, which we're going to talk about, and diabetes and weight, it's also very bad for the actual eye structure as well. So there's numerous benefits to having the colored glasses in different ways. And it's something, where a lot of people always want to know, what can I do to deal with blue light? And I think having having like a prop, the blue light glasses, is something that people can see.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the red glasses? Because I know some people use the red glasses. Who would be needing those?
Okay, so with these ones, these are orange, and say somebody who, because some people are much more sensitive to blue light and bright light in the evening than others, especially women. We seem to just, and we do perceive and react to light differently than men. So, in terms of switching my glasses later, I'd put the red ones on maybe 2 or an hour before bed if I had to expose myself to unexpected light in the evening, and especially people that really struggle with insomnia. The red ones can be really helpful because in some ways it almost makes the brain think it's pitch black. It's just that the red ones are a bit dangerous because you really sometimes can't see where you're going, and I'd look like an alien or something if I came with the red ones. But yeah, the red ones, they can be really helpful for people, but you wouldn't wear them too early in the evening or in the day because they could make you sleepy.
That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. But you would wear, like, say here now at this, I'm in Canada, and the light at, I think the sunrise is somewhere now around 7:30 or so in the morning. And I get up at like 5 in the morning. So would I be wearing the perhaps yellow blue blockers close to until we get close to sunrise?
Yes, that would work. Actually, it would probably. What's interesting about the eye is that in the evening after sunset, it's much more sensitive to light, and it's much easier to because your body is wanting to get ready for the evening to make melatonin and go to sleep. Whereas in the morning, it's not quite as sensitive. So you could wear yellow, but it'd probably be better to wear orange. But it does depend on what you're doing, because if you say turned on all the lights in the house and overhead lights and everything, it's really bright. So definitely the orange ones. But say if you had like a salt lamp or quite dimly lit in the morning, yellow ones would be okay, because a lot of the problems people have is they get too much artificial and bright light in the evening, and then they don't get enough light in the morning. So how we react to light does vary from whether it's morning or the evening. But it doesn't mean it's okay to wake up and then go straight on your phone just because you've got orange glasses on, because that's not the sort of the best practice. But obviously some people may need to check it. But in terms of your question, yes, you would also wear blue blockers if you get up before the sun comes up, which is the same in the UK at the moment. It's up sort of 7:30, and a lot of people are up before that, and then some people are up after that.
So let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, or the topic nobody wants to talk about, is weight gain, especially for women. And, almost everyone that I know is struggling with weight gain. And everyone's dieting and taking the supplements and doing Ozempic and doing all of these things. And sometimes nothing is working. As I understand, light has a lot to do with what's happening to our metabolism. Can you help us understand this a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, if we think about a hormone leptin, this is a circadian hormone, but it also has, people may have heard of it as an appetite hormone or the weight hormone, because it basically is an energy accountant. So it informs the brain of how much energy there is on board the body, and that then the next day your body will decide whether it's going to use or store energy. And people like insulin resistance, people can become leptin resistant, where their body doesn't take any notice of this signal anymore, and then they can run into weight issues or not being able to lose weight or unexpected weight gain. So first of all, just from a sort of biochemistry side, people may have heard of leptin. It can go low if people over fast or calorie restrict or over exercise. And then so you can influence leptin. It is sensitive to sort of food intake, but what a lot of people don't know is that leptin's a circadian hormone, so it's hugely light dependent. And that's why, first of all, having a good circadian rhythm or body clock is important for leptin signaling and sensitivity. People may or may not know about if you eat too late before going to bed, the way that leptin and insulin interact, that the insulin, because you ate food, would interfere with leptin signaling. But that's something people may know. The other thing about leptin is because it's a circadian hormone, and we set our body clocks when we see the sunrise and get morning light. If people are not doing that, that's an important part of the leptin, because it's called the leptin melanocortin pathway. So it ties into melanin as well, which we make from ultraviolet light. So first of all, to have a leptin problem, people could not be seeing the sunrise, being on their phone in the morning. And secondly, there's another sort of not opposite hormone, but a related hormone called melanopsin that's blue light sensitive. So if people are blue light toxic, as we would say, getting too much blue light during the day and before bed, that's going to also lead to problems with leptin signaling. So we've already learnt that seeing the sunrise, getting enough ultraviolet light, the morning light in the day, is important for leptin signaling, but also not blocking the blue light in the evening would lead also to having problems with the leptin. So that's one sort of side of the of how light would be a problem. So somebody's it's very well known about sort of shift workers and people that work unsociable hours, and how obesity and diabetes are a big problem. And you can measure leptin. Not that labs are always the be all and end all, but often when I've found or worked with people who've struggled with their weight and they don't know anything about quantum biology, the leptin has been a problem. So it is something you can measure. Then the other aspect of light and weight gain is if people don't deal with the blue light. Say if you're working somewhere and it's artificial blue light in your workplace and out of your computer, that the blue light's going to raise your insulin, your blood sugar, and your cortisol. And not that there's anything wrong with cortisol or insulin. Without them, we die. But when they're inappropriate or there's too much of them, people are going to be having high blood sugar and high cortisol on top of leptin resistance. So all of this starts to make a perfect storm in terms of hormones of why weight gain would be a problem. Then the other aspect about light that's really important, when we go out in the ultraviolet light, it makes things like dopamine, serotonin, enkephalins, endorphins. These are all sort of feel-good hormones or neurotransmitters. And when we have a lack of these feel good, the next easiest thing to grab would be, say, food or a snack or something like that. So first of all, the bad light, actually, from a hormone and biochemistry perspective, we can see how it makes a biology recipe for weight gain, but also psychologically, if people are exposed to the blue light, which also lowers their dopamine, it just makes them more wide open to sort of food cravings or these high energy foods or these dopamine sort of hit foods.
And also, I guess it makes them vulnerable to depression, chronic depression.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, everything is sort of all linked together. So if people have got bad circadian rhythm and they're not getting enough ultraviolet light in the morning, it would be a problem for depression. But then in terms of body clocks, if all of the clocks and the biochemical timing is out in the body, it's sort of like an airport that everything's all disorganized, that it just creates chaos. And another word in physics for chaos that biologists use would be inflammation. And then inflammation is also an environment where we know that it can encourage weight gain as well. So yeah, definitely there's lots of different ways that you can look at how a light problem could create a weight problem. If we come back to leptin on a more biophysics level, it's like an electromagnetic sensor. So it doesn't actually measure body fat. It can measure sort of how much charge or energy you've got on board in terms of, say, how much light did you get from the sun and charge yourself up like a solar panel. How much or how big is your water battery? Because sort of in simple terms, with the exclusion zone water, water or the coherent water. When we go outside, the light out there encourages expansion of this water battery. And just in simple terms, we can think if our battery is bigger and there's more electrons flowing, we've got more energy. So again, there's all these different reasons that play in of how light and weight are linked.
And that makes so much sense. And the morning light really is the most important part of the day, correct?
Yes, there's also studies on it about different sort of ways of looking at it. Whether I think there's 3 studies, and they were looking at making sure that people get. I think overall it was sort of at least like an hour of morning light, and it was like differences of a couple of BMI points. So that's kind of pretty massive. And the study wasn't particularly long either. So for people to be able to change a couple of BMI points in sort of maybe, I think it might have been 6 weeks or 2 months, that's a very sort of large amount of change. So definitely the studies on the morning light are strong. And also there's lots and lots of studies that have been done about too much artificial light or ALAN in the evening, and problems with weight gain, increased appetite, more insulin resistance, but probably about 30 years worth. So it's very, very well known about the artificial blue light at night. So it may not even just be people leaving their lights on. Some people sleep with the television on in their bedroom, or they've got curtains that are wide open and their neighbours' blue lights coming in. And like I said before, the body and the eyes are much more sensitive to light in the evening than it is sort of in the morning. So yeah, there's lots of information available about this metabolic situation and light.
In Holland, for example, they don't have curtains at all. They don't.
Oh, right.
They would be like a really interesting population to study, to see, what kind of reaction they have or what kind of illnesses they have in relation to light.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think even sort of weight loss and diabetes aside, if people don't sleep properly, that's a time where even if you've got a difficult life and you get bombarded with non-native radiation, or you've got a stressful job, if you can get your bedroom really dark, the right coolness, and sleep well, at least you can regenerate. And there's also lots of information about bad sleep, which then leads to food cravings and dysregulated blood sugar the next day. So yeah, that would be really interesting, because when I travel, I always have to remember to take my own like black curtains.
I have those, and I have little stickers, to put on the devices, on the TV,
Yes.
anything to cover. They sell those on Amazon now, like little stickers that you can put on and then peel away. Because I used to travel with electric tape, and I was using that to cover up all the little lights everywhere. But yeah, for the curtains too, it's good to have something to like pinch the curtains together, or I don't know what you can do in some hotel rooms.
Yeah, that's really, yeah, I used to have like gaffer tape, because there's a million
Oh,
uses of gaffer tape, but that, you can stick things up with that. But yeah, that's a good point. And also, just on the subject of Amazon, you can buy like a portable like light blocking little kit that comes in a bag, and you can cut the blackness to shapes and things like that. So definitely that's a sort of something that anybody can implement, because there's some things we can control in our lives and some things we can't. So for people to make a nice dark, very pitch black bedroom, that would be a really good start.
what do you say to people who say they cannot sleep in the dark? Like, I'm trying to get my parents to sleep in the dark, and they always need to have the bathroom light on or something on because they're just so used to sleeping with the lights on.
I don't know. That's like a retraining sort of habit, because I get that as well with children who say that there's a monster in the cupboard or
Yes.
under the bed, and
Right.
gremlins and all sorts of things. So I don't know. I think it's a tricky one, because I think when people finally get a good night's sleep, they really appreciate it, because sometimes people sleep badly and they either just don't think they know they do and just think they're getting old, and that's why they're tired, or they think, oh, my mother was an insomniac and I've always had insomnia, therefore I'm an insomniac. So I think that's more of a sort of psychological and education issue, because when you explain to people how important melatonin is, because it's not only a sleep hormone. It's also really important for regulating other hormones. It's important as an anti-cancer hormone. It is important actually also for metabolism, because we burn most of our fat when we're sleeping anyway, because we should be in ketosis. So sometimes when you explain to people the benefits of having a pitch black room, that they can then consider that and make changes. But yeah, I'm the opposite. If there's like the tiniest little bit of light somewhere, I can't sleep. And even when I didn't know anything about all of this, I always used to sleep with a towel over my head
Wow.
to block the light out.
Sarah, I have a number of clients, when I tell them that you should, steer clear of your screens at least an hour before bedtime, they will say to me, but I can't fall asleep unless I'm watching TV. And so, what would you say to that? Why do they have that experience? And, what would you say to them to help them start weaning off the TV as their sleep medication?
I can understand the sort of, about psychology and children and being told a bedtime story. I think there's an element of that. Now, I'd encourage them to look into an audio book, because it's the next step down, because that's something I do as well, that, there's a lot of ways you can have your phone not in your room, because that's the other thing. You don't want to be charging your mobile phone by your head when you're trying to sleep. But you can do things where if people must have it in the room, they can have it in airplane mode in a Faraday bag away from them. And it's just about finding something that's similar, as in an audio book, because I can understand the wanting the bedtime story kind of psychology. So that's the route I would go, because who doesn't like a good bedtime story? But the actual problems of the television, not just the light, but it's also the whole the radiation, the EMFs in the bedroom, because that's going to steal your water and disturb your sleep. And it can be very emotionally sort of overstimulating, because when you have to see something, and also it depends on what they watch, it's a whole sort of barrage to the senses. Whereas with a book, because you've got to imagine it yourself, I think. Also, in terms of people on a different level of, say, learning or be able to meditate or visualize, if we keep giving ourselves images, our brain thinks, oh, I'm not going to bother to do it. I'll just like accept from you. That's why I don't have a television. I haven't had one for about 8 or 7 years. And then it helps you be able to reaccess that movie ability in your head. And when you listen to an audio book, you've got to imagine the characters and the story. And I think it's really good for people. We've had that innate ability or all our existence, because we're humans. We've always told each other stories, and we have to sort of imagine everything in our heads. And I think there are other benefits other than weaning people off the television to an audio book, for just naturally how we process information. We can't just rely all the time visual. We've got to be able to still convert sound into our own movie. But that's like quite a long topic, and it's just something that when people ask me about how do I remember things or be able to learn things, it's because
How do you?
Yeah, well, it's that the thing is that when I'm trying to, with lots of sort of really complicated things, over time I can play a movie of, say, the TCA cycle that feeds the electrons and the protons into the mitochondria, and then I can play a movie of the electrons and everything going down. And when I'm trying to work something out, I always have to go in the dark and play my head movie, and then it's a way for me to be able to make a movie for myself, watch my own movie, and then I can find a way to explain or draw my pictures or my movie for others. But I think it's also important for children, because they seem to not do what I did when I was a child and rely on my imagination. They seem to rely way too much on sort of iPads and visual stimulation, and children are like massively imaginative, and and things when you, as an adult, things you want to do later, like meditate or have guided visualizations or do or learn hypnosis, this ability to do this internal visualization is really important. Same as setting a goal as well. If if you can play a really good movie in your head, and you can see yourself becoming or doing or being that particular weight or getting in that dress and play the movie and become that movie, I think that's a really another important part of this question about why people have issues or can't set a goal, or they set a goal but seem to not be able to see it through, that they never actually played the movie properly in their head. And in terms of how our subconscious works, it doesn't really know the difference between real and imagined. So there's a lot more to the television problem than just blue light in the bedroom, because that alone, just anything like the television and the light that comes out, there's lots of studies on why that's unhealthy, but then there's all sorts of layers of other reasons of why TV before bed's a problem. I think it also influences people's dreams as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sure. Sarah, would you recommend, for example, like if somebody like first of all, what I wanted to say about you listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook, which is a great idea. That's what I do at night before bed. And you can just set a timer on it. So for example, I normally fall asleep in like 30 minutes. So I set a timer for 30 minutes. And then by the time it goes off, I'm usually asleep, which is a great way to do it. But what I do, I have my iPad next to me. It's always on airplane mode. I have everything downloaded that I'm going to listen to. Is that okay to have it next to you on airplane mode, or do you still need to put it in something to protect you?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, because the more advanced phones are becoming and the more complex the batteries and the kind of technology that's in them, when they've been measured, sometimes even in airplane mode, they emit 10 to 30% of some kind of radiation. So airplane mode isn't airplane mode necessarily. That's why it's either put it in a Faraday bag or put it really far away from you, or some people can open the door of the bedroom and put it out of the room and still be able to hear it. So that's the problem about airplane mode. It's not always completely off. So yeah, that's just something it's a really good question about weaning people down, because sometimes for somebody who's a phone addict, just having it on airplane mode's a massive achievement. So there's no need to spoil it all for them straight away to tell them it's still emitting some non-native EMF, because with non-native EMF, reducing any amount, even 20% is beneficial. And also it's always distance is your friend with it. So, even if somebody has to have the phone in the bedroom, just put it further away. So there are ways around it. Or obviously the ideal outcome, same with the television, is to not have the television before bed and don't have the phone in the bedroom. But as you say, exactly, when you work with clients, sometimes you can either tell them in massive detail what damage they're doing, and they may or may not respond to that, or just like find step downs of ways into reducing exposure to devices in the evening and before bed.
Yeah, you have to sometimes pick your battle with the clients, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that they're all different. Some people, if you overscare them, they get so terrified they actually get worse. And then other people, like people with me, if you just told me this thing and this is why you mustn't do it, I'll be okay, I won't do it. But not everybody else is like that. And then the whole thing about understand, sometimes people don't even know why they need something. They think, oh yeah, I need my special music just before I go in my cold plunge, and I can't go in my cold plunge without my power music. That's just an example of a good friend of mine. We were talking about this yesterday because he couldn't find his phone, and he just said to himself, for goodness sake, you silly man, just get in the cold plunge. And then the whole thing about humans and our special routines is that we do like a routine. So it might be with people, okay, they find the television really relaxing, but they've never thought of having a bath with Epsom salts and maybe, listening to that. I think learning any kind of meditation of any sort, because it's just such an enormous subject, that might be another reason. It's sometimes the reason people want the television is it's because it's something they think's calming them down. So therefore you need to find another thing that's going to help calm them down instead.
To substitute for that. So Sarah, if a client comes to you and they said, okay, I have 20, 30 pounds to lose, where do I start? Where would you start them? Would you start them with diet, or would you start with the environment? What would be the most important thing to address first?
Okay, yeah, so I have like I'd always ask them because I ask loads of questions, and I'll ask all about first of all the quantum day about and have a look and see, because sometimes if somebody's a shift worker, that's going to be a problem. And then I'll always ask people, I'm not about food. I'm not going to laugh at anything or criticize anything. Can you just show me what you eat for 10 days so you stay exactly the same size? And it doesn't have to be, we're not counting macros, just so I've got some kind of baseline. And then that gives me a window to look into, okay, which is, where it is, where might there be some low hanging fruit, and where is there going to be a big barrier? Because say if somebody just didn't know anything about quantum biology and they're self-employed and they're not seeing the sunrise and doing all kinds of things they shouldn't be, it's very easy for that person to just be told, okay, you need to see the sunrise, you need to go out for a walk in the ultraviolet A light, you need to get
Without
blue blockers.
sunglasses, right? Without sunglasses. And
Yeah,
that's
without
important to
sunglasses to
state that people
confuse your
don't
body.
realize that.
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. People wear sunglasses in the UK in the middle of winter. So yeah,
Yeah.
without sunglasses, without sun cream, UV light has got more benefits than you can possibly imagine, and so many people are deficient. And then I would look at it that way and see, because somebody might have children they need to take to school, but definitely I think everybody can do something about the artificial blue light, especially at home. And then the whole thing about the seeing the sunrise, explain to people, even if you've got a massively hectic morning, but you're up, just do what you can to get 2 or 5 minutes outside, because we can all manage to do that.
Is that enough? 2 to 5 minutes? Would that be?
No, not at all. Not in terms of really what needs to happen is people need to, like, if I could have say if I could have the ideal situation, I'd have the person up, say, around just after daybreak, because there's plenty of light there, so they can get ready, and then I'd have them go out for a walk, so they actually walk somewhere, see the sunrise, get as much of it on their skin as they can, in their eyes. It will work great because it's sort of quite cold, and then walk back and then have their breakfast. Because the other thing is to people and weight is, it's like, how much do you want to get rid of this problem? And the bigger the problem, the more you're going to have to try. So I just found, from when I do experiments on myself, which I always do, making the effort to walk somewhere and actually see the sunrise and then walk back was a massive game changer. So if that's possible, I'd get somebody to do that. But then when it comes to weight loss, sometimes people will actually do anything, including taking strange medication and having surgery. So if the person really gets it about the sunrise and the cold and then coming back and having an appropriate breakfast, then they're just going to do it. But other people, it might take a bit of coaxing. So definitely I would go for the blue light, because everybody can buy blue blockers. And, when it comes to our phones and our computers and our screens, we could all do better, because luckily we sort of control what we put in our mouths, but then we also do ultimately control our phone. So it would also be making sure that I'd go also massively for the bedroom and it being dark, and making sure people sleep well. Because sometimes with people in weight, all it is, they're just not sleeping properly, and then they're a bit cranky the next day, and they're eating stuff they shouldn't because of a sleep issue. So there's different ways that you can address it. There, like I could talk about, there are other sort of aspects to weight loss that you can guide people with, because magnetism from the earth, that's another form of energy that people can gather. So if you say people, okay, I accept you can't ground because you don't want to at the moment because it's dirty and it's cold, fine, but even just going outside in the magnetism, not sitting upstairs in your bed on the phone fiddling about, that's a way to be able to collect energy from the environment. Because when we were talking about leptin before, it doesn't just speak the language of food, it also understands that magnetism's energy, sort of water, there's energy available there, the solar panel, the sun is energy. So sometimes you can explain to people the more energy you get from the environment. There's also we would just call it plasma for now, that's in the
Ether.
air outside.
Ether, yeah. You did an excellent episode on your podcast about the ether and the plasma. That was fascinating.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
The thing is with because we've because of I don't want to go because I could go my brain could go anywhere.
sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
No,
yeah,
we're not
with
going to
the
go there.
ether and the plasma, they're two slightly different. So but they are fundamentally the same thing. It's just a cloud of charge, a medium that we live in. But because it's charge, it means energy. And then in sort of simple language, the ether we can say is just pure potential or energy. And then Nikola Tesla spent his life finding ways to get sort of electricity or energy out of the ether. So that's completely possible, things like wireless communication, but that means that, because we exist in it also, there's ways to get energy out of the environment. That's a bit of a whole other topic for
Mm.
people who might be thinking, just the idea of them being a solar panel and being able to get energy from water and energy from the magnetic field or magnetism of the earth. That might be, oh my goodness, that's like enough for me. I didn't know any of that. And then
Right.
the
Yeah.
ether, that's a really important,
Right.
fascinating subject,
Mhm.
which is part of quantum biology as well.
Yes,
But yes, I
yes.
think, I accidentally digressed a bit. But I think with, like you say, with the client, it's just about finding where in what they're doing could lie the problem. And then again, with certain foods, as you both know, there are certain sort of terrible for weight foods. And sometimes for some reason, people nobody ever told them about peanut butter or certain other foods that are sort of the super weight gain food. And maybe it's ignorance, or maybe there's the food addiction there. So sometimes it's understanding, are people eating that because they don't know or because they can't help it? And definitely when they can't help it, that's definitely, if they know they shouldn't be, but they keep doing it, that's definitely more when you sway into the quantum biology, because it makes it easier for them to just naturally get more energy from the environment, feel more grounded, more connected with nature, get rid of the blue light, help to correct sort of some hormone imbalances that could be driving the binge eating. But on the other hand, you might get somebody who just really doesn't know about food, and you have to explain to them why eating that from a quantum perspective probably isn't the best idea, or people who are eating 6 times a day or eating
Yeah.
just before going to bed. So it does depend, because there's a lot of ways you can walk people in. Just for some people, I know it might just be, just using somebody as an example. For her in the beginning, it was just eat in daylight, because of, she was having whatever she was doing in the evening, and just for 2 weeks she found that was difficult, but she learned, and then she lost 2 pounds, so she was all excited and just and was all happy, ready to for the next sort of simple thing. Okay, that worked. What do I do next?
That's really
Mhm.
cool.
And I live, as I said, in Canada, and when I talk to people about, going out, at sunrise, almost 100% of the time they say it's too cold. I don't want to go out. It's too cold. But you've also mentioned that cold is important, is it not, when you're exposing yourself to sunlight? So can you talk a little bit about the cold?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the cold is an amazing subject. So first of all, when it's in the morning, in terms of zeitgebers or timekeepers, because we've got lots of them, whether it's light or gravity or food or temperature, the body's expecting it to be a bit colder. So going outside and getting cold reinforces the whole system. Okay, we've seen the light. It's cold. Oh yes, it's definitely morning. I can organize myself. Then when it comes to leptin and insulin resistance, cold exposure is really important for becoming more sensitive to leptin, which was the hormone we discussed before. So that would be a good thing. And then also it improves insulin sensitivity. So then a lot of people know about insulin resistance and weight gain. The other important thing about the cold is it encourages the production of neurotransmitters, like especially norepinephrine or noradrenaline, and also even oxytocin. So there's like a antidepressant effect, and those are sort of metabolically boosting. The other important thing about the cold is just from simple physics, it's just a way to make your body have to produce more heat in order to overcome the cold. So for people who really don't want to go to the gym, it's a way to boost your metabolism without actually having to exercise, because I understand why some people wouldn't want to go in the gym. And then from a sort of mitochondrial perspective, it's a bit deeper than that. It can actually be really helpful the cold can help the mitochondria compress a little bit. So the electron transport chain, or the current or the electricity is more efficient. And then if the mitochondria are behaving more efficiently, it means that people's metabolism is going to be improved. And there's also some anti-aging benefits from cold exposure. And then if you've got snow, that's a double bonus, because all of the light is going to, the near infrared is going to reflect off the snow. So you get a double bonus. And also for the ultraviolet light, if it's a nice blue sky day, you're going to get sun from above, and then you're going to get the sun or the reflection from below. And we can never get enough, UV light really in the winter. Yeah, I think. Was there anything else? I think you did ask another question about it. Let me just think. What was it about the cold? And it just slipped my mind.
I think you've pretty much covered my question. Yeah.
There was definitely another part to that. I just, for some reason, I can't think of what I'll remember it at like 2 a.m.
Yeah, me too.
Sarah, as far as cold exposure, because some people are confused. Like they think cold exposure means you have to have the ice baths, like that it has to be very extreme. But that's not actually the case, right?
Oh no, that's just going outside with a coat on is a good start.
Or a coat off if you can manage it, right?
Yeah, I think the other thing about it is it's just about if somebody's very warm adapted and isn't cold, hasn't cold adapted yet, sometimes it has to be gradual, because it can be too stressful and it can be really discouraging because it's so uncomfortable. Because say for somebody who's never gone out in the cold for a walk in the morning before, just going out for a walk in the cold in a coat is like a massive achievement.
Yes.
And then you can start to explain, okay, if you expose sort of where the brown, well, that's what I remembered now what it was about the brown fat.
Yeah.
Yes. The brown fat on the front of the chest, and then in the upper back. If you expose that a little bit to the cold, so it doesn't mean taking your shirt off, it just means not to wear like loads of scarves, and even if you just opened it a bit, that would count as cold exposure as well. Then the other part about cold is also it can encourage our cells to make ultraviolet light, so we can make light on the inside. And other things, there are other situations where the DNA in our bodies will also emit ultraviolet light. It's a sort of slightly different situation, but it's definitely well established that we make light on the inside. So the cold exposure is going to encourage us to make light on the inside. So maybe in the winter when there isn't so much light from the sun, we can just make our own light. And that's really important for melanin production as well, be it the melanin on the inside of the body or the melanin on the outside. So there's lots of benefits to the cold and going out. And if it's snowy, that's even better. I am aware in Canada it can be -20, as in C, not Fahrenheit.
-30. Oh yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yes, we've had -30. Yes.
Because also sometimes because I've never actually been out in -30, sometimes in certain places, even though the weather says -5, it'll say somewhere else feels like 0, and then sometimes like today it was 2 centigrade, but then it felt like about -6. So
Exactly.
is it appropriate for people to go out in that cold? I mean, how?
Yeah, I think sometimes they will give advisories like you don't want to be out for longer than 5 minutes, that sort of thing. But the other thing too is the humidity. The drier it is, the more we can tolerate.
Yeah.
The extremes of cold. And I also live by Lake Ontario, which modulates the temperature a little bit more than say more in the interior of the province here. So I think one of the things is more that people get so insulated. They get I'm very harsh And I call my fellow Canadians very soft because they are so afraid of going out into the cold. And but the more you do it, and because I walk a dog, right? I run into people who are walking their dogs at like ungodly hours in extreme temperatures. And after a while, your body accommodates to it. You know, it doesn't take long, maybe a month or two into the winter, and your body accommodates to it, and it actually feels good, you know. But most people, you know, hunker down in the winter and they just don't want to go out anywhere if they don't have a dog.
Oh yeah, that's exactly humans all over about our
Yeah,
comfort zone and
yeah,
how you know, we like doing the same thing over and over
over and
again,
over
but
again.
also and we like novelty, yet you know we still want to be nice. People like being comfortable, but I think it's back to because yes, sure, I can be polite about things with people, but it's all back to, well, how much we were talking about weight loss. How much do you actually want to lose weight?
Exactly.
If somebody, if you've got the perfect like environment that it's really cold and you've got snow and you know you want to get yourself going in the morning and you've got some mild depression, it just makes sense that it's completely free. And I'm the same. I have a very good tolerance to the cold. I mean, you know, as long as it's not to excess because it can be stressful, but I think it's just people need to be told the benefits, and then it comes a point where they just have to do it, and it'll be uncomfortable for a bit, but very quickly, because we're primed to see the sun and be addicted to the sun, and our bodies like it when we do something natural. There's a very like important connection with us and the Schumann resonance in
Right.
terms of brain waves, and once you start doing something you're supposed to do, people will just, it's much easier to get people to do quantum and see the light and sunrises and get more sun, because it's your body will naturally be like, oh yeah, I like this. But on the other hand, trying to get people to give up cigarettes or food, that's actually much more difficult, because that's a whole other topic. So for people who are probably thinking, oh no, I don't want to go out, it's cold, there comes a time where your body gets used to it being normal, because it's
Yes.
setting all the clocks and it's ticking a
Yes.
lot of really important, deep
Mhm.
connections with nature feelings. They'll just start being annoyed if they accidentally forgot to set the alarm, or they stayed somewhere with a friend and they couldn't get up to do it. So I
Mhm.
completely agree. You just have to suck it up and do it. That's why I did want to double check about in Canada. Is it, you know, because you obviously don't want to give dangerous advice to people, but the other way to
Mhm.
do it, they can always nip in and out as well. If it,
Exactly.
it's like graded exposure.
Mhm.
And what
Um,
people don't realize that it's actually a superpower, like being cold
mm,
adapted, which I have been for over a decade. You know, everyone like here, like I'm in Spain right now, so when the temperature drops even a little bit, everyone's got their boots on and
oh yeah.
scarves and everything. And I'm, even when it's like 4 or 5 degrees in the morning, sometimes when I wake up, I'm there in my little pajamas, my shorts, I'm barefoot in the sand, and everyone looks at you like you're crazy, but I'm honestly not uncomfortable. I feel comfortable. I feel fine. I do my exercises or I walk and I feel absolutely fine. And people can't even imagine that. But once you do become cold adapted, it is, you feel like
Mhm.
you're superhuman, like your
Mhm.
podcast.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
But also what I've found is I really embrace the dark and the cold, because there's always two sides to every coin. Because even though I went to El Salvador quite recently, they got a point where it was just so bright and so hot and sweaty. I just could not wait to get back to the
Mhm.
UK to get the cold and the dark. And then there'll come a point, which is kind of quite soon, where I think, oh yeah, I've been freezing my ass off and in the dark. It's time now to go in the light. And I just found by accident that this cycling really worked for me. And I think I often think about it when I walk around in Leeds or where I live. And you know, there's lots of good reasons to live here. And okay, we've got the clouds are the big problem. That's our issue. But the whole thing about the cold is, you're completely right. You have to just embrace the
Mhm.
superpowers of nature in where you live. And there's, I could go on for ages about the power of darkness for sort of healing and for sensory deprivation, or a dopamine fast, which is really good. And then the benefits of getting cold, like we discussed, are absolutely enormous. And it's free as well. And you can go out in the cold by yourself. I think it's like the whole trying to get people to do something. I can understand why people say if someone was 50 pounds overweight, why they wouldn't want to go swimming, or why they wouldn't want to go to a gym or go to an exercise class. But then something when I have worked with much bigger people, I've said, if you go out really early in the morning for a walk to exercise, nobody's going to see you. And they love that. And there's a story about somebody, he's local here, and he was 30 stone. I'm trying to convert that into pounds. It's something like 450 or 500. And what his superpower was, somebody said to him, well, look, mate, if you get up and just go for a walk every day, like for an hour and a half, just go to the park, because, no one will see you. And then, because he was like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, I don't want to go out of the house, I'm so big and people will laugh at me. So there's that other benefit of often in the early morning walks outside, nobody's going to see you, more, including everybody. There are lots of people who think they look much worse than they do, but there's also you can not be looked at by others. And then, of course, we have to always consider safety as well. But like you said, Lucille, there's often, a couple of other people out walking their dogs as well. So
Yeah.
there's lots of sort of benefits. And then in terms of the cold exposure early in the morning, I think sometimes just going outside and being with nature first sets you up so that when you do have to deal with the emails and whatever, you're in a better mood. Because I've done this by accident. I think, don't touch the phone. Whenever you open that, there's going to be something in there to drive you crazy or suck you into the vortex, and there always is. So I think on a sort of emotional and mental health level, I think it can give people a bit of resilience. But that's back to what you were saying, Lynn, as well, that the other use of cold exposure is it teaches you to just do it. There's like the psychological thing of, I really don't want to get into this freezing cold bath, or I don't want to open that door and go out. And because every single day you've thought, right, I'm going out, a blast of cold, or whether it's swimming in a lake, and over time you just get used to it. So there's like the mental resilience of a transferable skill to other things, where you think, right, I don't want to do this, I'm just going to do it now. And then that's what I found. One of the other unusual benefits of getting cold adapted was you get more tolerant to other situations when you're not comfortable or you don't want to do something.
Yeah.
That is definitely true. I've definitely noticed that as well. Sarah, have you had people, so would it be possible for someone who doesn't want to change the way they eat at all, and they only want to use these tips to, embrace the light in the morning, the sun exposure, blocking blue light? Is that enough to make a difference, or is food also a factor?
Well, the thing is, it's something it's to do with, it depends what the food, it depends in terms of what, if people just want to eat like McDonald's or Twinkies or overeat. There's just so much like information, say if somebody just wanted, there's like two different scenarios here. Say if it was back in the 1950s or 40s where everything was home cooked, and definitely people ate cakes and stuff and puddings and whatever, but it was all actual food. Okay, that's totally different to people wanting to have takeaways and chocolate and McDonald's. Possibly if it was all home cooked food, and I'm not a fan of like grains or all high deuterium foods. I'm not a fan of dairy, but I would think, okay, I'm just going to leave that for now. And then if they weren't doing any quantum at all, it would be a good experiment. And because it was actually proper food, possibly if it's just food with horrible quantum information that's full of iron filings and good deuterium and goodness knows what else, the food companies are full of glyphosate and stuff, I just think it's just common sense to know that it's not going to work. But also on the other hand, it's like sometimes you can just think in your head, okay, I'm just going to leave the food completely alone and get them to do all the quantum stuff and just see if they stop eating that or eat less by themselves. And then that happens as well, because I think it depends on what did you actually mean by does the food matter? Because
like, for example, if your light environment and your life and everything else is structured in a proper way, can you get away with eating foods that you shouldn't be eating and still keep your weight?
Yeah, definitely.
Very
But as
achievable.
long as they're not every day,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
whole thing. Because I think a lot of it is okay. If it was, say, home cooked proper food, that I think, okay, well, I don't really approve of desserts, but at least you made it yourself. I would But then having a dessert every single day is totally different to somebody having a chocolate bar once a week. So I think it depends on the quantity, the type of food. But then it is the question, is there any, because that's the other question. If people think, oh, I'm never going to be able to have a cake or chocolate ever again, I must deny myself. That is one mindset. Whereas, if people think, oh yeah, if I do this quantum stuff, there's possibly a little bit more wiggle room, and if I time eating the chocolate bar at a particular time, or choose, it depends what the thing is that somebody wants to eat. Choose the least quantumly destructive kind of food. I think it's possible. I just want to say, definitely, when I went to El Salvador, there was a huge amount of obesity. So and the people were outside all day, they were grounded. It was really sunny, and they were cooking away, and they had seed oils and all sorts of things. So that made me think, no, but on the other hand, there are lots and lots of surfers, people who are in the sea all the time, with teaching people to surf, being active, being grounded. And then when I had a sneaky look to what they were eating, it was crap, and yet they were really slim. So I think it does depend, because there is a difference between somebody sitting outside in El Salvador, we'll use an example, playing on their phone all day, so they're in the sun and they're sort of grounded, compared to somebody who's just wearing swimming trunks, running up and down on the beach and being in the sea, all of their body exposed to the sun. And then those two people eating the same food, I would say that there would be wiggle room in that sense, as well. So, and then also, I suppose, just in terms of really, really cold places, I think there are stories about when people have done Antarctic treks and they eat sort of 500 calories worth of just fat and lose loads of weight. So, yes, that there are ways to. I think it's like a question, even if somebody looks slim and fit on the outside, okay, that's great. But what about all of the stuff that's in the food that they ate? What happened to them on the inside? So I think it
Exactly.
depends on stuff like that. But yeah, that's a really tricky question.
But
But
definitely, I
I
mean,
can't, I don't, I definitely don't think you can just go and like live in El Salvador and eat seed oils and all that and be okay. But I think there would be lots of ways you could use quantum biology to improve your metabolism and your mitochondria. We've talked about cold, we've talked about better bedrooms and sleeping, and then yeah, that I would imagine that the impact of the chocolate or the cake or the whatever it is would be less.
And then not eating after sunset, that's really important as well, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's the same in Canada, that sometimes in the winter the sun sets at 4 o'clock. So
Yes.
sometimes with people, I'll just say within 4 hours of bed. So yeah, ideally you want to eat in when there's light, and not eat when it's dark. You have to also give people like a time, because otherwise, what happens in the UK and even Canada in the summer when the sun sets at 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock, right?
Yeah, so sometimes you have to, because even okay, there's still plenty of light, and then if you eat a big meal at 10 o'clock and you go to bed at 11, you're still going to have annoyed your gut and woken everything back up again, and the leptin can't bind properly because there's insulin about. So you sometimes have to have another way to explain to people that eating too close to bed is going to make your sleep bad, and then you'll have different problems the next day.
Hmm.
What's
Yes.
what's like the ideal time to go to bed?
I always want to, there's that window between like 10 p.m. and 12 where we make growth hormone. But then when it's really dark, here in the UK, you can get like a healing or bonus by, I go to bed sort of much earlier. And because it's that dark, I just go to sleep, and I'll sleep for longer than I would normally. So I'm sort of, there's nothing else I could do, so I might as well go and heal, or so I would definitely say before, if possible, before 10 p.m., and actually be asleep at 10 p.m., because making growth hormones really important, because that's sort of when we look at hormones that teenagers have, and we at our age don't have, growth hormone is definitely something that is important. And you can run into, I know there are plenty of growth hormone like peptides, and you can buy growth hormone, but I think it's something that you really want to be able to make your own as best possibly you can, just because taking an outside growth hormone could run you into quite a lot of issues if you didn't know what you were doing and you had lots of deuterium. But yeah, the whole like before 10 would be a good idea. And then there's also we've got lots of funny rhythms in our body, and sometimes if you stay up past a certain time, and it varies from person to person, whether it's 12 or whether it's 11 or 1, your brain thinks, oh, this person's pulling an all-nighter, so they'll push your cortisol up because they think, oh no, we're going to be up all night, so let's get ready for that. So you have to watch out for that little thing as well. There are people I know that if they can learn to go to bed a bit earlier, they'll go to bed and stay asleep. But once the point of no return is hit, that happens, and then they'll tell me, "Oh yeah, I was up till 6," and I said, "Yes." What
Yeah.
have I said about this? The
Right.
kind of peak, yeah.
Right. So that's what people refer to when they say, I got my second wind.
Yes, yeah,
It's,
definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Because there are other hormones that keep, yeah, that'll happen. And then like prolactin is something that can, for different reasons, get high in men and women. And that's something that women produce when they lactate. But it's also when you've got a brand new baby, you need to be up all night. And sometimes people who do get their progesterone, if they're doing HRT wrong, can get way too high prolactin. And with men, there's lots and lots of testosterone boosting supplements around, and they can sometimes take a concoction. And then when I've looked at labs, they suddenly say, "Oh, my sleep's terrible." That hormone as well is something that plays a role in bad sleep, and it also has metabolic effects, the high prolactin as well. So that's just something, for some reason, you happen to remind me of that's relevant to men and women and sleep and weight.
I also wanted to ask you, Sarah, I have to prescribe, I'm a psychiatrist, so I do prescribe medications, pharmaceuticals for my clients. I try as much as possible to get them to balance their brain functioning through natural methods, but sometimes you can't get away with it. So how does taking pharmaceuticals, how does that impact, your own energy production, mitochondrial functioning, etc. And can things like natural sun exposure start diminishing a person's dependence on pharmaceuticals?
Oh, definitely. So that's a really good question, because with antipsychotics, for example, I think you call it, is it Zyprexa? We'd call
Mhm.
olanzapine. That
Mhm.
definitely causes
Olanzapine,
leptin resistance.
yeah. Okay.
So I think that's a really, really important like subject, because there's all different categories of medication. And then this is something I'm personally really interested in. It's like, would it be possible to mitigate the horrific weight gain that can happen from these antipsychotics? If we understand leptin, would we be able to mitigate it by telling people, if you block blue light, see the sunrise, the leptin problem, or you don't have to, I don't know how much in depth you go with your patients of what you tell them, whether that could mitigate some of the problem with those classes of medication, because yeah, they definitely cause insulin resistance and leptin resistance. And I definitely think the effects of those classes of medication on insulin and leptin could definitely be toned down. I mean, I might even have to do the experiment myself, because it's one of those things you can't, you could always, some patients are really terrified of antipsychotics only because of the weight gain. And if you say to them there are ways to be able to like manage this leptin and insulin pathway, but then when it comes to SSRIs, I think some of the SSRIs interfere with how T4 turns into T3, whereas ultraviolet light in the mornings are a really important factor for making thyroid. So you might be able to mitigate some of that issue there. Then when it comes to serotonin, I know about this. There's lots of studies about. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but in terms of simplicity, sometimes if people or the patients think so, serotonin is a happy hormone, and that's why I'm taking SSRIs, if you tell them you can make serotonin in the sunlight, they might think, oh, actually, yeah, I think I might do that instead. But definitely, I think when it comes to wanting to taper off medication, it can be really helpful to have, okay, I'm going to be taking away this medication, but I'm going to bring in the sun to be able to help you feel better, because like we know, the sun produces makes us produce feel good hormones. I'm trying to think of other categories. Yes, so definitely with anxiety, the blue light and the cortisol, that can be if people have less blue light exposure, definitely you can manage their cortisol. And also if people's circadian rhythm is all over the place, the person's just anxious, as in the biology doesn't know what time it is, so it just gets stressed out about it. So yeah, there's definitely lots you can do for quantum and mental health. I'm trying to think of some other, as you probably, we don't want to like scaremonger, but they aren't the best for mitochondria, the SSRIs. And then I think it depends on how long people are using something for. Sure, there are things like benzodiazepines which people can get dependent on, and then you're running sort of into dopamine issues.
Right.
But I definitely think you'll know much better, Lucille. There are some people that really don't want to be on the meds and can't wait
Yes.
to come off. And then
Yes.
there are other people who just like saying, oh, well, I'm on one antidepressant, can I not have three? So
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
it's one of these things, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because it ties in really nicely to what we were talking about leptin. And I think it's something that other psychiatrists that I know, they actually really cringe when they have to prescribe olanzapine, thinking, oh no, like the weight gain's coming, what am I going to do?
Yes.
And then some people stop taking the medication because of it. So I definitely think there's a lot of mileage in investigating light and leptin and olanzapine, because it doesn't happen to everybody, the weight gain. And then for some people, it's like, as you know, 80 pounds.
Exactly. Yes.
But
Yeah.
also, I think the other important aspect about this is that with some people, they didn't know this was going to happen, and then when I can look in their history and think, oh yeah, you took this antipsychotic, it'll be in my head, okay, so leptin. It might be that when they come off the medication, the weight goes quicker, because that's the problem. Some people think, oh, when I stop taking the meds, the weight will go, and unfortunately sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes if you know what pathway you're dealing with, it can actually be helpful later for people. But exactly as you said, some people are going to be on antipsychotics forever. And I have some people who have schizophrenia, but for the 100th millionth time, I've said about the sunrise and the takeaways, and and they're very functional, mine, and I can't be angry with them, because they've done so much better than most people. It just really annoys me that they could actually be completely off the meds, and probably they will exhibit some interesting behavior sometimes, but there's always the what ifs. But I think that's a really, really, really important question about the mental health and the quantum. And I definitely think there's huge amounts of other things that people can do that they didn't really understand from a quantum perspective. Because, for example, if we talk about human consciousness and how it's something called charge collapse, and this is something that isn't really disputed, and it's sort of waves of charge in a particular harmonic sequence in the brain that makes a bliss state. If you say to people, your consciousness and you and your happiness is electrical, and it has to be all a particular set of waves, and they compress, and it makes something called a bliss state. And if you think I'm talking rubbish, you can go and look for yourselves. If you put those things in your ears, those Bluetooth headphones, or sleep with your phone by your head, you're really disturbing. And even people who know absolutely nothing about anything, when I've explained it in that way, I've said it's your consciousness, it's your personality, it's interfering with it. They're like, yeah, I don't like the idea of that. And then they just stop doing it. And then they'll tell me, oh, my tinnitus went away, and so did my anxiety, and now I can sleep. And yeah, so I think that's also a really important thing to consider, is like because you don't want to scaremonger people who have mental health situations about
Yes.
Wi-Fi, because sometimes you've probably seen the same, when they become a recluse and go berserk over it. But I think there's lots of like massive things in quantum for people with mental health situations for certain, whether they're coming off meds or not wanting to use them or wanting like extra, and then the science behind it actually sort of makes sense to lots of people as well. But yes, I think it's back to what you were saying at the beginning. Sometimes getting somebody with depression to go outside in the morning when it's wet and cold is
it's a tough job. It is.
oh yeah, I have some close friends who are psychiatrists. It's a massive subject I don't talk about with anybody. But I think of all of the things I can sing the praises of quantum, and whatever quantum is, whether it's like not just light, water, magnetism, obviously more, but like electricity and stuff. I think the mental health is the thing that sold it to me more than anything.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sarah, thank you so much for your time. We learned so much from you. It was such an amazing interview. We could have you here for hours and hours, but
Yes.
we don't want to torture you. Sarah, please tell our audience where they can find you, how they can get in contact with you. Do you do like personal consultations? Can people contact you and do a consultation with you online?
Yes, under certain circumstances. I've just like got loads of deadlines at the moment. So I've got a members group. So that's like a monthly group. If people want to be in a group, then I have some courses. But then I think I always prefer it if people have found all my free stuff first, because I've got a variety of free PDFs. There's one on leptin. There's just one on quantum kickstart. There's one on, I think I called it quantum clear out or detox. You find things that people are obsessed with. There's one on leptin, I think I said, and then I've got a Substack, and there are some of it's you have to subscribe, but the vast majority is free for people that like to read long form blogs. And I've got Instagram where I try to make carousels, not just silly reels. I used to be fun in my youth. I can't be bothered with making anything funny now. I'd rather, it's kind of educational. I try and make a carousel where it's like 8 things and it's like a little story with a picture, because some people learn that way. Then I've got a YouTube channel that's like interviews, but also I'll sometimes make a 20-minute or 40-minute video about like with slides, just to sort of walk people through.
And your podcast, your new podcast?
Yes, I just launched my podcast. Although all of my interviews, I'm moving them from my YouTube onto my podcast, so that would be the quantum-based podcast for people that want to listen. But it's sort of it's all there. It's there on my YouTube. I just have to move it because not everybody likes YouTube. I need to spread it out. So yeah, there's the quantum-based podcast. So you can listen, watch, look at pictures, read, get free stuff. And I do consultations. It's just at the moment there's like I'm not like we all have a backlog, but yes, but I can do. And like I say with people, I'd much prefer it to learn about my stuff from the free stuff first, and then if you want to spend money and you understand about me and what it's going to be, then to join, because I wouldn't want somebody to book a one-to-one and like have a complete shock about all the stuff I've just said. They need to have a bit of a pre-idea what I'm going to be like.
Yeah. So. And we have to say with Dr. Lucille, we agree on this. The interview you did with Dr. Jack Cruz was the best interview we ever heard, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
that was amazing. Yes.
Which one? The one when he was in a massive mood when we were starting, and I thought, oh shit,
yes, he was in a massive mood. Yes, I remember that.
And then I asked him about temporal lobe epilepsy and time travel, and then he just lit up, and then it was like he was like, oh yes, good questions, and then we had everything. We had he really delivered, and I think that of that podcast. That's sort of really part 3 of the Huberman trio, because we kind of went into things, and I don't think anybody's ever asked him like any of the same stuff, and like we had telepathy and that because me and my interest in stuff like that, that comes up all the time. And I think we talked about psychedelics, and then he talked about mTOR a lot in that, about the myth about calorie restriction. But that's a really important point about the light and the UV active proteins. And yeah, with that one, and also I was really, I think even with that one, I went through everything he referenced because he was quite generous with information. So I actually found all of the stuff he'd mentioned. I've never heard him talk about the Nother again. Lots of that stuff in that podcast, it's not ever come back ever. So yeah, that's definitely something. I wouldn't say, if somebody's all brand new to Dr. Cruz, and
Yeah,
they
I
watch
would not
that,
introduce.
No, that's not what we
Quantum.
yeah, but it's definitely, if somebody really liked the Huberman duo, that's part 3, and it's like, wow, whoa, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things. For some people, they discover something like that and think, I really want to know what that was all about, and then go and learn the other way. So yes.
No, it was epic. Congratulations.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. You did an
Amazing.
excellent job.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We really appreciated having you here.
Oh, I appreciate being invited. So I'm really honored to be on your podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. All the best.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning into the Rewilded Human podcast. We hope you're leaving with insights to reconnect with your natural, vibrant self. Remember, the information shared here is for educational and inspirational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for any personal health concerns. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit. We'll see you next time, ready to dive even deeper. Stay wild, stay true, and stay tuned.